How did I become the first Scrum trainer in Europe? So I have to go probably quite some time back, and quite some steps back. So when I started to work as a programmer, my background is software engineering. I realized that the way you work is probably as important with how you work. Like, because we were fulfilling all the requirements we had, we were doing it in a technical, solid way. We gave it to our end users; they couldn't work with it. And then I realized maybe the way how you work is important. And then I looked around, and this was 98. I discovered the unified process. And what I liked about the unified process, and the unified process probably is not that much around anymore. Maybe UML, Unified Modeling Language, the notation language for the unified process, still is. But in the unified process, you had use cases as the centerpiece, not the system shell. And the use case gave you a lot of context. So instead of the system shall dispense money, let's say for an ATM, you had a use case where you go in, you insert your card, you get prompted for the PIN and so on. So I like that. I was following that for about 2 years, kind of really reading up on the unified process and how this works and all of these things. And then I ran into a book about extreme programming, which turned my belief system upside down, because everything, or most of the things you have learned and started to believe were challenged essentially. And extreme programming is very much an engineering approach to agile software development. So everything we probably call agile these days was created in the 90s, Scrum, extreme programming, and so on. And in extreme programming, that's where the name is coming from. You basically answer the question, if we take something good and we put it to the extreme, what would it look like? So we know, for example, that testing is important. So what is the extreme of testing? You don't test once at the very end, you test all the time. So that's how test-driven development was created. And once you have test-driven development going on, then the next point is, hey, integration is important. So what's the extreme of integration? Well, we do it once at the end, like plug and play. Reality usually is more like plug and pray. You integrate all the time. So you have continuous integration systems, which are pretty much standard these days in most of the tooling we have. They go back to extreme programming though. So once you have your test-driven development and test automation and continuous integration, you have the first steps towards a really more sophisticated build pipeline. Then the other thing is that, hey, if it's important to work with your business, so why don't we do it every day? So extreme programming had this idea of an on-site customer, so a person you basically could interact, ask the questions every day about what to do in which way. That is covered in Scrum through the product owner, essentially. Code reviews are also kind of proven to really improve the quality of the software. So what's the extreme of a code review? Well, you don't do it once in a while, you do it all the time. This is how the idea of pair programming was created, where kind of two people programmed together, pilot, co-pilot. And there were, I think, Laurie Williams, she did her PhD on that topic and she wrote a book about it. Their studies basically really confirmed that, it seems like a waste of money to people, but the statistics show the software quality is much better and far less bugs. So overall, it pays off. So I've done pair programming myself for years, and I really like this practice still. Like I try to get customers to apply it if they think it's worthwhile. Now, going back to this question, why I'm the first PST in Europe. So basically, I dove into Agile really early on, and doing extreme programming really helped my team to become better at what they were doing. We were having more reliable releases, higher quality, less issues, so everything was good. But somehow it didn't really anchor correctly in the organization. And at this point, I was looking around and I discovered Scrum, probably 2002, I would think. So then the combination of Scrum and extreme programming really helped myself. In 2004, I did the first Scrum Alliance CSM training. I couldn't do it with Ken because he just wasn't around that much. So I did it with Dan Rothon, if I remember his name correctly. But it was really good training. So I could convince my manager and myself, basically we went there and we did this training, and then we went back and just said, okay, how can we make this fly in our organization? He was a really good boss. We still have chats once in a while, even though we haven't been working together for over 20 years now. But anyway, so this is how this whole journey started for me. And then I became a CSP like 2 years later, kind of like the next level from a CSM practitioner. And then I realized, so maybe, I have enough experience. I can talk about this as well, help people go through the phases about maybe making first this mental adjustment to think empirical in short iterations, but also like shared experiences in places and teams where the struggles I was going through and the things which I discovered helped. So I started then to become a CST around 2006, I think it was. I started this process. And I was in the first talks, I was looking for someone basically I could collaborate with. And so in 2009, I then decided, hey, maybe I want to become my own trainer in that regard, because I've had enough experience. And also after the company with my boss, which I just had mentioned, of their San Francisco office, and I had various clients there, kind of really bringing in Agile as well, so kind of lots of experience. So I was in contact with some already established CSTs, and at this point they were also starting to create something. There were talks about called professional certified Scrum developer, because there was this awareness that having a great Scrum master is important, but hey, if people can't really do proper Agile software engineering, it wouldn't fly. So I reached out to the Scrum Alliance. I think I sent even an email directly to Ken and just say, I need to be part of that, because that's what I do for a living. And we were in contact. Yeah, everything looked good. And then basically the Scrum.org was founded. So I was like already in the steps of becoming a CST, but now suddenly there was the Scrum.org PST. And at the end, I decided, let's just cut cords with Scrum Alliance and let's move over to Scrum.org 100%. So then I was collaborating with Ken, actually. At this time, I had moved back to Europe, to Switzerland. And the consulting company I was working with, we then created the first Java PSD training. It was still called PSD, then now it's called Applying Professional Scrum, SD for software development. So I was creating that training, and then I basically, through that process, I became a PST early 2010, and apparently that makes me the first one in Europe. So nobody's really objecting this right now, maybe, but I mean, this was kind of really the early days, and I remember the very first face-to-face. Basically, we came together once a year in Burlington, where Scrum.org is headquartered, and it was like 8 people, and Simon Reindl was there as well. And because we were kind of a little bit in a clinch who's there first. But anyway, so we met there with Ken Schwaber and then we kind of going through that. And this was like the first kind of core of PSTs with Scrum.org.